So good day everyone, I'll be discussing chapter 23 from martial law to people power 1972 to 1986. So I'll be discussing one of the most important chapters in our country's history from martial law to people power governing the years 1972 to 1986. This period shows how democracy was challenged, how authoritarian rule shaped our society, and ultimately how Filipinos united to restore freedom through peaceful action. So, political context before 1972. Before 1972, the Philippines maintained a functioning democratic system where national elections were held on predictable schedules, ensuring regular transitions of power and political accountability. However, President Ferdinand Marcos, nearing the end of his second term, sought ways to retain power and ultimately relied on the 1935 Constitution's martial law provisions, which followed the executive allowed the executive to declare emergency rule during rebellion, invasion, or imminent danger, providing him the constitutional justification to extend his presidency beyond legal limits. So before 1972, the Philippines had a functioning democratic system with regular elections. However, President Marcos was ending his second term and was looking for a way to stay in power. He used a provision in the 1935 Constitution which allowed martial law during invasion or rebellion as his legal justification. This shows how Marcos used the law not to protect democracy but to extend his rule. So, Declaration of Martial Law. Through proclamation of 1081, Marcos imposed martial law claiming troops from the Communist Party of the Philippines, the New People's Army, and rising civil unrest. Using the doctrine of constitutional authoritarianism, he suspended civil rights, closed media networks, dissolved Congress, and arrested political opponents, activists, journalists, and student leaders. The shift to the 1973 Constitution institutionalized centralized presidential power, enabling Marcos to remain in control under the guise of national security and reform. So when Marcos declared martial law in 1972 through proclamation in 1981, everything changed overnight. Congress was shut down. Media outlets were closed and many critics, journalists, and activists were arrested. He justified by calling it constitutional authoritarianism. The 1973 Constitution then formalized his power and allowed him to stay in control for many more years. So Marcos' New Society. The New Society Bagong Lipunan was presented as a national transformation program aimed to instilling discipline, eliminating corruption, and promoting economic development. Marcos framed this as a revolution from the center, distancing himself from both leftist insurgents who wanted radical change and right-wing elites who favored the status quo. He promoted a vision of a strong, morally upright, and unified Filipino society, although in practice this vision justified tighter state control and suppression of dissent. So Marcos promoted with called a new society, supposedly disciplined and orderly nation. He described it as a new revolution from the center, claiming he wasn't siding with either the left or right. In reality, this vision is used to justify tighter control over Filipinos and limit their freedoms, even though it was presented as a path to progress. New society reforms and programs. Marcos implemented sweeping reforms including the reorganization, the bureau accuracy creation of NEDA to oversee long-term economic planning and establishment of the National Grains Authority to stabilize food supplies. He introduced land reform through presidential decrees and strengthened the Population Commission to manage demographic growth. Although these programs appeared progressive, they were hindered by limited funding, patronage politics, and uneven implementation, diminishing their intent impact on ordinary citizens. So, Marcos introduced many reforms, such as organizing the bureaucracy, creating NEDA for economic planning, and reforming the National Grains Authority for food security. He also launched land reform and population control programs on paper. This sounded promising, but in practice, many of these reforms failed due to lack of funds, political favoritism, and corruption. The reforms were more about consolidating power than improving lives. So, infrastructure and foreign policy. The Marcos government invested heavily in infrastructure, constructing roads, bridges, mass housing, hospitals, ports, and energy facilities, including the ambitious but controversial Bataan nuclear power plant. On the diplomatic front, the Philippines broadened foreign relations, establishing ties with China and the Soviet Union, maintaining strong U.S. alliances, and strengthening regional cooperation by joining ASEAN. These actions aim to project an image of modernization and geopolitical flexibility. So during this time, the government built many infrastructure projects, roads, bridges, hospitals, ports, and even Bataan nuclear power plant. These projects made the Philippines look modern, but they were extremely expensive and contributed to massive foreign debt. In terms of the foreign policy, Marcos expanded ties with China, the Soviet Union, and the US and strengthened our connection with ASEAN. So, economic and political decline. By the late 1970s and the early 1980s, the Philippines faced severe economic decline brought about by excessive foreign borrowing, rising national debt, and heavy dependence on IMF World Bank structural adjustments. These conditions triggered inflation, decreased public spending, and widespread unemployment. Meanwhile, crony capitalism flourished as key industries such as coconut, sugar, and logging were dominated by Marcos allies who enriched themselves while the majority suffered. Public trust eroded as poverty deepened and corruption became more blatant. So by the early 1980s, the economy started to collapse. The government owed huge amounts to foreign leaders. Prices were rising, unemployment was increasing, and public services were deteriorating. Meanwhile, Marcos' close allies, his cronies, controlled key industries and became richer. Ordinary people suffered and trust in the government eroded completely.
Next is growing oppression. Oppression leaders face of relentless harassment, surveillance, and imprisonment, creating a climate of fear. At the same time, Emilia Marcos accumulated unprecedented influence as governor of Metro Manila and Minister of Human Settlement, leading to accusation of a conjugal dictatorship. Election in 1978 and 1981 were made by fraud, manipulations, and overwhelming advantage of the TVL political machinery, weakening the credibility of democratic institutions on intensifying public protection. Next is early protest movement. Despite repression, resistance grew as activists organized hunger strike, produced underground newspaper, and the staged creative protest actions such as the noise barrage of 1978, where citizens used car, arms, and Thames cans to express dissent. The Catholic Church, led by the Cardinal Sen, condemned human rights violation, while student group, worker, peasant, and religious lay workers world Borders Alliance documented cases of salvaging torture and disappearance. Next is the assassinations of Nonoy Aquino 1983. The assassinations of Benigno Nonoy Aquino Jr. on August 21, 1983 became the catalyst for nationwide outrage, rooting from Axel with hope of promoting diplomatic change. He was shot on the airport tarmac moment after leaving. His death shocked the world and transformed his funeral into a massive political demonstrations that united the middle class, business community, religious group, and even disillusioned members of the military. The event exposed the regime brutality and accelerated in decline. Toward the snap election, as the economic crisis worsened and Marcos' health deteriorated, both internal and international pressure, including from the United States, mounted. Massive state protests, often called the parliament of the street, demanded democratic reforms. To regain legitimacy, Marcos announced a snap presidential election from February 7, 1986. The opposition united behind Cory Aquino and Dewey Laurel, while Numfrel mobilized thousands of volunteers to monitor the vote and prevent fraud. Election fraud and public outrage. Early results from Comelec indicated Marcos lead, but the impartial number truly consistently show Cory Aquino ahead. A dramatic workout of 38 Comelec computer technicians who posted vote manipulations sparked outrage and strengthened public conviction that the election was rigged. Cory called for nationwide civil disobedience, encouraging citizens to boycott Cory-owned bank, corporations, and media networks, signaling a massive withdrawal of support from the region. People Power Revolution EDSA 1. On February 22, 1986, Juan Ponce Enrile and Fidel Ramos defected from the Marcos government, prompting Cardinal Sin to urge the public to protect them. Over 1 million Filipinos failed EDSA, forming human barricades in front of tanks and troops. Civilians offered food, prayers, and flowers, embodying a peaceful resistance that inspired the world. As military units defected to the people's side, the Marcos family was forced to flee to Hawaii, marking the end of dictatorship and the victory of the People Power Revolution. Significance of People Power. The People Power Revolution was a historic triumph of nonviolent collective actions, proving that ordinary citizens could topple an entrenched dictatorship without arms conflict. Is it restored the democratic governance led to the drafting of the 1987 Constitution and become a global inspiration for peaceful revolution in various parts of the world. It remains a defining moment of national pride and civic responsibility.